The Evercade community is really divided on these blue computer carts, particularly those that are centered around the Commodore 64. In one camp, you have people who grew up with this system and absolutely love these collections for the nostalgia they bring. This is particularly relevant to our British Evercade friends, who have much more nostalgia for this little system than us Americans do. On the other hand, most American YouTubers that cover the Evercade tend to absolutely despise these carts. With no nostalgia to speak of, they often call these games archaic and just downright unplayable. I'm an American. Like most of us, I grew up on the NES and had no idea what a Commodore 64 even was until well into my adulthood. I love the idea of these carts because I love exploring games that I had no idea even existed. I currently own every blue cart on the console, but the first one I tried was the Thalamus Collection, a group of games from one of the big-name Commodore 64 developers. I thought this would be a really good place to begin my Commodore 64 journey, and I took the time to play through every one of these games and try and give an objective look from someone with no nostalgia. Before I get into my rankings, I think it's important to mention this caveat. After spending a good chunk of time with this cart, I think one problem people have with it is that it is not pick up and play. Most of these games are very obtuse, and if you want to give them a fair shake, you should read the manual, spend some time with it, tinker with it, get to know the controls, and if you do that before you can even hope to decide if you enjoy these games or not. If you just pick up one of these carts like you would an arcade game, be prepared to be disappointed. These are games you have to learn and figure out before you can do anything. Having said that, let's get into my rankings. In last place, we have Winter Camp. I didn't make it too far into this one. It starts off with a skating mini game. I had no idea how to control it, but I did look at the manual to try to figure it out. I eventually got a handle on it, and I was able to make a little bit of progress, but it was just not any fun. This game tries to be a mishmash of several different playstyles, but none of them are executed well, controls just weird, and at the end of the day, I got frustrated and just turned it off. I don't think I'm alone in this, as this is a game I almost always see at the bottom of everyone's rankings. In 10th place, we have Heat Seeker, a game where you play as a leg with a ball. You hop around and you have to find these little stations to kind of gather energy into the ball. When I talk about games that are obtuse, Heat Seeker is the literal definition of that. Do not expect to make it anywhere in this game without reading the manual and spending some time figuring out how it works. I did that, and I got a handle on its basic gameplay mechanics and saw what the gameplay loop was like. I thought it might be interesting and really spent a good amount of time playing through it. But weird, interesting concept aside, the controls here just suck. Your leg kinda hops, which makes sense if you only have one leg, you gotta hop. But it just doesn't make for responsive play mechanics. It was just a slog moving around from screen to screen, and as enemies become more frequent, you could throw the little ball at them, but you are not fast enough to keep up. I feel like this game had some potential, and if controls were just smoother or was a little faster, I think I would have enjoyed it. But as it stands, it is just too clunky to be any fun. At 9th place, we have Summer Camp. Much like Heat Seeker, it's another game with an interesting premise and bogged down by terrible controls. You play as this little mouse in a camp collecting all these little items. I love the graphics here, and the gameplay seemed kind of interesting. It was fun discovering what all the items did, and there are some cool power-ups. Every screen is like its own little single-screen platforming challenge. It is definitely obscenely tough, but it's the kind of game that I would just use a lot of save states for and have a good time with if the controls were just not so darn terrible. Jumping is just unresponsive. I never felt like it jumped when I wanted to, and in a game with such a high difficulty level, you need to have responsive controls to have a shot at success. But I was just continuously falling on what should have been easy jumps until I just turned the game off with utter frustration. Add another game to the list with such missed potential due to terrible controls. In 8th place, we have Snare. It's an overhead, kind of puzzle-ish game, I guess. I don't want to say this is a bad game, I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. It does this weird thing where you're always moving forward, and when you press left or right to change directions, the whole screen shifts perspective rather than just your ship. It really is a little jarring. I was able to kind of figure out the movement, but I could never really figure out what to do. I beat a handful of levels, but it all just seemed like I was dumb lucking my way through everything. There was a lot of blind jumps and random deaths, like everything kills you, and I feel like the gameplay was largely trial and error based. Of all the games I disliked on this cartridge, this is definitely the one I disliked the least, and there's a possibility for potential here. I just wasn't having any fun, and at the end of the day, that's really all that matters when you're playing a game. In 7th place, we have Hunter's Moon. This is the last game that I disliked on this cartridge. And just like the last couple of games we talked about, we have another game that seemed really cool but was just hampered by slow, unresponsive controls. This is kind of like a shooter, but there are some exploration elements. There are obstacles everywhere, and you go around clearing them all out while searching for the exit. Each world seems like it has branching paths as well, as when you beat a level, you could select which level you want to play next. Of all the games I did not enjoy in this collection, this is definitely the one I spent the most time with, because when I first started, I was having fun with it. I liked the level design, and I really enjoyed exploring all the different worlds. The control was just kind of slow and unresponsive, and when I first started, it wasn't too much of an issue, so I was able to deal with it. But as the game progressed, the challenges became progressively harder, and the level of speed and precision I needed to get past were just not delivered by this game's controls. Just a shame, because this is a game I thought I was really going to like, and I did for a while, but at the end of the day, the controls were just too annoying to keep up. And as we move into the number 6 spot, we get to the first game that I enjoyed and completed on this cartridge. From here on out, I will be only speaking positively of the remaining games because a lot of them were really good. The top 3 or 4 could have really went either way. Creatures 2 is a sequel to the next game on this list that forgoes the platforming elements of the first game in favor of a greater emphasis on the torture chamber sequences, some mini-games, and a few boss fights. I really enjoyed the torture sequences in both of these games, but the sequel forgoes the traditional platforming levels in favor of a few different mini-games. You have 3 basic styles here. One where you're bouncing your friends on a little pillow to get them to the end of the stage. It's kind of reminiscent of those stages from Earthworm Jim 2. These little swimming levels where you're swimming and you have to get your friends on the island to safety, and finally a boss fight at the end of each world. All 3 of these were fun, but they start to get a little repetitive as the game goes on, and as good as the torture chambers were, I found myself really missing the standard platforming, which is why I scored this game just a little bit lower than its predecessor. In 5th place, we have The First Creatures. This is a game that was really well received at the time, and I could see why. You play as this little furball looking dude trying to rescue his friends from the evil monsters. You start out with a fireball, a jump, and a flame that can be charged by holding down the attack button. As you go through the levels, you collect all these little creatures that can be used to buy new weapons and upgrade your existing weapons. This is absolutely pivotal in order to succeed, as you're going to need stronger weapons as well as weapons that fire in different directions to succeed on the later levels. It's a pretty challenging game, but once you kind of figure out how it works, it's not that bad. I really like the graphical style of it. The worlds all have a very unique look and are filled with all sorts of different obstacles and weird looking enemies. At the end of each world, you enter these little torture chamber sections. Here, one of your friends is about to be killed in a really gruesome way. Like, a lot more than you expect from a game like this. They're usually bloody and really morbid. You only have so much time to rescue them before they are executed. These levels are like little mini puzzles. Each has its own gimmick, and it never as simple as just shooting your way out of it. I need to look at a walkthrough for 1 or 2 of them, but they are really fun to play, and I can understand why the second game focused so heavily on them. As much as I enjoyed the second game, I'll give the nod to the first one. The torture sections here are just as much fun, but I prefer the platforming challenges in between the torture sections to the stuff that the second game offered. In 4th place, we have Hawkeye, a side-scrolling run-and-gun that is a little bit more complex than it first appears. Before you begin this game, I would highly recommend going into the controls, seeing what they do, and editing them to your liking. You have a jump and a shoot, but each weapon can be switched to with the touch of a button. All of them are really powerful, but have limited ammunition except your pistol. Being able to switch freely through these weapons at a moment's notice is pivotal to getting anywhere in this game. The basic pistol is good for small enemies, but when a giant enemy appears or a large mob, you're going to need to switch fast in order to have a fighting chance, then rapidly switch back to the pistol in order to conserve your ammo. I've seen a lot of people try this game and get completely stuck because they didn't configure the controls first, and they wind up just running out of ammo and not knowing how to switch back to the pistol, and then dying. With that out of the way, every level has 4 icons. You must collect, but they are hidden. They appear when you get close. Luckily, you are not just running around blindly. The bird head on top of the screen has two eyes. One of them will glow, indicating which direction you need to go to find the next icon. If the left eye is glowing, you gotta run left and vice versa. Once you collect all four, you just run to either side of the stage to exit the level. Gameplay here is really challenging, with some tough platforming, but the emphasis is on combat. You get all sorts of different enemies that attack in large mobs, and some really large enemies that just pop up out of nowhere. You die really quick, and you have a pretty strict time limit, so you really have to keep moving constantly in order to finish the levels in time. This is definitely one of those games, like most games in this collection, that you'll be really happy that save states exist, but it is a ton of fun blasting your way through the levels and collecting all the hidden icons. Armalite Competition Edition comes in third place on this list. Most of the games in this collection are obtuse. It takes some time to learn, and you really gotta put in that time before you can get enjoyment out of them. This is not really the case here. If you have played any other vertically scrolling shooter, you know just to expect. You fly around, collect power-ups, shoot everything that moves, pretty standard stuff. You get this little option that floats around with you that you could use to enhance your attacks. It's just really well done. I think if I played this when I was a kid, I would have loved it, as the only shooter from that era that I think is better would be Life Force. It is a very difficult game. I tend to be pretty bad at the style of the game in general, but I was able to make it through. There was definitely some safe state abuse going on, but this game is definitely worth a play for fans of vertical shooters, and also earns the award of least obtuse game in this collection. I had a really difficult time choosing my second, third, and fourth pick, as I really enjoyed all of these games, but I decided to give the number 2 spot to Retrograde. This is just a real unique and fun shooter that when you first turn it on will make you remember Defender. It has a similar style in the beginning. You fly back and forth and enemies just flying at you everywhere. It's fun to just go around, shoot things, collect various icons that pop up, but it takes a while to figure out really what you're supposed to be doing. The basic gameplay loop has you starting each world by flying around shooting enemies and collecting coins, which are the game's currency. Collect enough of them and you visit the shop to buy all sorts of different weapons. The upgrade system here is really cool, as you buy different weapons that shoot in different directions. You only have so many points that you can allocate to your weapon slots, and you have to figure out how best to use them. There's a lot of resource management involved here, figuring out the best way to upgrade and balancing versus the cost that you have total. You could pour everything into a super powerful forward laser, but then you can't shoot behind you or up and down. Every world has new weapons to unlock, so you're constantly playing with the system to find that perfect loadout. You also use your currency to buy a bomb. Once you have the bomb, you have to find these little layers. Once you enter them, play shifts into a downward scrolling platformer. You get to the bottom, plant the bombs, and blow up the lair. Once you are done destroying all the layers on each world, you are then taken to fight a massive boss in outer space. The game seems really difficult at first, but it's not too bad. You are awarded extra lives when you meet certain point thresholds. Gaining extra life also refills your health, so with some smart grinding, you could farm the lives and health to give yourself a fighting chance. Retrograde is such a cool game. It's very unique and has non-stop action from the second you turn it on. And finally, at the number 1 spot, we have Nabi the Aardvark. This is a game that I see get criticized a ton in the Evercade space, and I honestly do not get it, as I absolutely love this game. The way I describe it is Battletoads for the Commodore 64. It's insanely difficult, but it's also constantly switching up playstyles, much like Battletoads. And although I would not say this game is as good as Battletoads, which to me very few games are, it has that same vibe to it. It starts off with you as a little aardvark, walking around an island. You could jump, and when you find an anthill, you could eat out of it, which then fills up your beak for ammunition you need to shoot down the enemies that stand in your path. Everything kills you in one hit, and when you first load up the game, expect to die a ton while you get your head around the mechanics. But once I got used to it, I was able to beat the first level without dying pretty easily. You quickly realize this is not just a standard platformer. The second stage has you flying in a balloon, avoiding hazards, and dropping bombs on enemies. The game is constantly throwing new gameplay mechanics at you in between the platforming challenges. You get some standard stuff like a minecart level, because every platformer needs a minecart level, and then you get all sorts of other cool things like an overhead maze and a submarine shootout, just to name a few. All the gameplay styles were done really well. They were fun to learn and offered a great challenge. You get 9 lives and 7 continues to beat the game, but of course you could feel free to use save states as well. I absolutely adored this game. I know I still have a lot more to go as I explore the Commodore 64 library, but for now, this is definitely my favorite game on the system. Its awesome challenge and crazy mix of different genres just makes it so much fun and so unique. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below. If you did not grow up with the Commodore 64, what do you think of these games? What are some of your favorites, and what are some of the games you absolutely hated?